Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. Today we are going to be talking about the cosmic understanding of the sun in the birth chart, or just, in the astrological chart in general, but specifically the birth chart. So first, let's start with talking about nature as a premise for astrology. And when I say premise, I mean premise. I say premise. What's really important when it comes to astrology, at least for me, is to understand that astrology is like language of nature, and how we can understand ourselves as a part of nature, because we are a part of nature. And so that's why, there is a difference between, Libra and Aquarius and Gemini. Although they're all air signs, they're very different qualities of air. And, even just having the modality as well, amongst other things. So it's really important to recognize that first, because as we talk about the cosmic understanding of the sun, we want to look at the sun in nature as the premise for how we look at the sun within our chart. So let's start with the, very basic kind of understanding of the sun within nature, right? So as it relates to plants, right, the sun gives plants nourishment and warmth, amongst other things. And with this nourishment, with this warmth, the plant is able to grow. Okay, the plant is able to expand, and it has a lot to do with exposure of the sun, right? Because just because the sun is out doesn't mean that all areas are being covered by the sun, because there's shaded areas. And so that's why, if you're getting into gardening, they say it's important to know where you are putting your plants, because you want to make sure that they get the most exposure to the sun that they can. Obviously, we also know that the sun also burns as well, and having too much sun on your plant is also not the best thing as well. So what does this have to do with the sun in the birth chart? So everything on earth has an impulse, right? That's how everything was able to, well, number one, earth is conscious. That's number one. But as it relates to stages within life, everything has an impulse to go from one stage to the next. And I actually should put that here. I'm looking at my notes, by the way. Everything has a stage, has a level that it gets to. And impulse is a part of intelligence, because Earth is intelligent. So in order to have an impulse, or not in order to have an impulse, but intelligence and impulse are very intertwined. A lot of the times, at least for me, when I used to think about intelligence, I thought about it in terms of information, which is more of a Gemini or mercurial way of understanding intelligence. But intelligence is within us all. It is within everything, and it is not what you know, it is what is, right? So for example, as I was growing up, right, or as we grow, actually a perfect example has to go for hair. So I cut my hair, last time I cut my hair was 2019, I believe. And as my hair was growing, I didn't feel that it was growing. Does that make sense? We don't feel it within our bodies when our hair grows, for the most part. Don't get me wrong. We don't feel every single particle and every single follicle, growing, right? However, it does grow. That's an intelligence, okay? And there's an impulse to grow, okay? Now, there are lots of people who, especially when it comes to hair particularly, there gets to a point where their hair stops growing, okay? So the impulse is no longer there, okay? All right, so I just wrote in my notes stage, because I had age there already, but I added ST, because I'm like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense when you think about stage and of course when you think about age. So obviously in astrology, how, or not even just in astrology, just in general, how do we know someone's age, right? We know it by the year they were born, okay? And we know it by the month and the day, right? Our birthday. So this is why the sun sign in astrology is significant. As much as we want to discount it and or say the moon is better or the sun is better or whatever, like, you know, the sun has its purpose as well. And the sun is how we can tell how old someone is. So for example, science is simply an explanation for the spirit, or explanation for the metaphysical. And when you think about, like, for example, I got my period the first time at the age of 12. I'm trying to find the word. Most research, sure, most studies say that girls would get their periods from the ages of 9 till about 13, or 9 to 12. That's the usual, like, normal occurrence, right? How would they be able to tell that girls are getting their periods from the ages of 9 to 13 or whatever? Because there's an impulse. That is something that simply happens, and you record it long enough and you recognize the intelligence, okay? Same thing goes for people say at the age of 25, which I just passed my I'm officially 25, so I'm officially in my second house perfection year, and people say at the age of 25 your brain matures. How would they know that, right? It's through studies, it's through time, through evolution, and through growth, okay? Another thing too, when you're 25, you get to rent a car anywhere without extra fees. So you can rent a car, I think, when you're 18 or something like that, 19, 20, but they're going to add extra fees until you're 25. Same thing goes for insurance. They stop adding extra fees when you're 25. You're no longer a young driver, okay? And it's not like that for every age. There's not like a goal in every age, if that makes sense, right? When you're 18, you can finally buy tobacco, which I actually don't think that's like that anymore. At least where I live, I don't think it's like that. I think you have to be 21. When you're 21, you get to drink, right? And there's other things with certain ages that I can't really think about right now, but that's what I'm trying to say. These goals, right, that kind of come with these stages in life are very specific, okay? And that has to do with the sun, because you wouldn't know, or people would not know, by just by looking at you, right? How old you are, okay? And if people look at your ID, that's how they're able to tell, okay, this person was born under, and like I said, that's all the sun. When they're looking at that, they're not looking at your moon, they're not looking at your Mercury, they're not looking at your Saturn, they're not looking at any of that. Now, if the person looking at the ID is a very advanced astrologer, maybe they do know the outer planet transit of, the year that they're looking at. But for the most part, people are just looking at it to make sure that that you're that age of that you've gone around the sun a number amount of times. Okay? And this is connected to solar returns, specifically because a solar return is about the very specific age within your life. And you can look at the solar return as a way to understand more of what's going on in that particular, time in your life, as well as, annual perfection years. But it has a lot to do with exposure as well. Age has a lot to do with exposure. For the most part, as you grow, you get exposed to more. For the most part, obviously, there are certain discrepancies, and everything does not apply to everybody, but one thing that does apply to everybody is everybody knows your age because of your sun sign and your year. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about awareness. So, and Christ consciousness. So Christ consciousness is the, I don't want to say ideology because it's so much more than that. I would say spiritual practice, or the spiritual application of lucidity and of awareness, of love and awareness of spirit. And so I do think that awareness has a lot to do with impulse and intelligence and age as well, because Jesus Christ, as a figure, as a guide, as a deity, whatever, as a figure, is associated with the sun. The sun being our sense of awareness, but also known as the Son of God, right? The Son of source, of the first impulse, which everything kind of mimics in a way. That first impulse, I think, in a way, everything is the impulse. But we're getting a little too Pisces, even though, a lot of people say Jesus Christ was a Pisces. But anywho, the whole point that I'm making is that Christ is very significant with the sun. And so that's another reason why the sun in the astrological chart is so important. Now, even if you're not really vested or really interested in Jesus Christ, again, Christ consciousness, like I just explained, has a lot to do with lucidity and awareness. And if we're talking about the state of reality, the state of this realm of reality, and awareness and waking up, right? That's kind of what everything is about, right? Everything is about waking up. Then yes, it is important to talk about awareness, whichever way you want to talk about it, right? Some people say Christ consciousness, some people say other things, but when you get to the core of it, right, we're all talking about lucidity and whatnot. So that's just a little bit about awareness and Christ consciousness. And just to talk about it just one more time, it said Jesus Christ died and was resurrected on the third day. Okay. I don't remember who it was. Oh, damn. I'm not even going to say it because I seriously don't remember, and I'm not going to butcher it. But awareness, I'm just going to kind of leave this particular part and just say that awareness has a lot to do with the sun. Okay, so the house of the sun sign envelops the sun. It nourishes, it shines on the sun, and just like a plant, okay? So you have to make sure that you're putting your plant in a certain area to get a certain amount of sunlight a day. And obviously it's not just sun, right? We're talking, plants need water, okay? And need a container to grow in. So I just want to put that out there, but this video is specifically about the sun, okay? So think of the earth. This is another example. Think of the earth as a house, which it is. And the sun is within it, if you want to look at it in terms of astrology. So you have the earth. So let's say, okay, if your sun is in the 9th house, right? The 9th house would be the container. Okay, I'm actually gonna ignore that last example of the earth and the house, and I'll just talk about the plants because it's just so easy for me to talk about nature in relation to astrology. It's so much easier for me. So let's say that your sun is in the 9th house, no matter what sun it is, although yes, the sun sign does matter. Okay, but let's just get really basic with it. The ninth house is the container. So if you think about a plant, okay, actually, I'll just use this. No sponsorship. So this is a container. This is a container for what? For pencils. But it could also be a container for whatever creative person decides to use it as, right? It doesn't have to just be for pencils, although you bought it and it's a container for pencils, okay? So as the sun in the ninth house, you want to make sure that you are caring for and nourishing, and that you're shining a light on the matters of that house. Does that make sense? So if you're a sun in the ninth house, studying foreign cultures, exposing yourself, going to events within your town that has a lot to do with foreign cultures, or has to do with travel, making it a part of your day. Because remember, a plant needs a certain amount of sunlight a day, okay? Well, usually it's an hour, but a day, okay? It's not how much sunlight does it need a week, not how much sunlight, like it has a certain amount of sunlight. And this is very basic gardening tips 101. I'm not saying I'm an experienced, gardener or anything like that, but this is very basic, like everybody knows this. It needs a certain amount of sunlight a day. So you need to be focusing your attention and your awareness on whatever matters of the house where your sun is in, okay? Because that's going to help the rest of your chart, the rest of your, of the energies within your chart. But it's a certain amount of energy. A certain amount of shine. Remember, the sun also burns plants. If you're leaving the plant out in the sun for 24 hours a day, yes, it will burn. Okay? So the ninth house has to do with higher learning, has to do with religious structures. So even if a sun in the ninth house is going to church, for a certain amount of day, or looking up sermons, or learning about mythology, what else? Being involved, I would say like Renaissance festivals gives very much ninth house. Festivals is more 11th house to me, but if you're talking about very specific things, yes, to me it's very much ninth house. Amongst other things, ninth house has to do with a lot. Taking tours is very ninth house, like taking a tour at a university or taking a tour anywhere. You want to shine a light, is what I'm saying. You want to shine the light on the matters of the house, because it will need to be nourished, okay? It needs to be nourished. Yeah. All right, let's see. So the qualities of the sun sign and its expressions also obviously depend on the element, the modality, and the sign. So if you have like sun in Gemini in the 10th house, you want to shine a light on the matters of the 10th house, right? Then you have the sign, which the sign is the kind of plant it is, or whatever it is that you're growing, right? Literally whatever it is. So Gemini, let's switch that to Virgo really quick, just because I think it'll be easier for me to talk about Virgo at the top of my head. So if you're growing like cannabis per se, right? So like a sun in Virgo in the 10th house could make a career out of growing cannabis. That's like a very basic, type of thing. But because the 10th house is status and recognition and titles. And even if they change their social media names, right, to specifically, like I said, sun in Virgo in the 10th, changes their social media names to like Miss Cannabis Queen. I'm so serious, you guys. I'm so serious. And because people do refer to people as their social media names in real life. It happens. I think people have referred to me as my social media name, I think like when I was in college, like once or twice. But I'm just using that as an example of how someone who has sun in the 10th house can really nourish their 10th house. And I use like Miss Cannabis Queen because Virgo has to do with healing, and Virgo also is an earth sign having to do with plants. It's a mutable sign, okay? So that's a little bit of why I use that. Sun in Taurus in the 10th house, perhaps, or even their business name, even if it has nothing to do with cannabis, could have I'm talking about Virgo. I'll talk about Taurus real quick. But with like, why does this happen? I'll be right back. I know why it happens. It's a time, light timeout thing. But a sun in Virgo in the 10th house could have a business that has absolutely nothing to do with cannabis, and they could change the language of the business so that it means cannabis, but like you wouldn't know. You know what I mean? And like I said, that's a very generic example of how to use the sun within your chart in astrology, depending on what house it's in. So let's say if you have like sun in Taurus in the 10th house, Taurus has to do with decadence and a little bit of hedonism, pleasure within the senses and stuff like that. So the sun in Taurus in the 10th house could change their name, their social media name. And it doesn't only have to be your social media name. You know when people say, what would you like us to call you? Like, I've gone to different jobs, orientations and stuff like that, and they're like, what do you want us to call you? It's as simple as that. You don't even have to change your name on paper or anything like that. And you could use your sun sign, especially if you're talking about the 10th house very specifically. You could use your sun sign and look up etymologies, look up the significance of your sun sign, even just out within life, right? What you associate with Taurus, right? Taurus is a fixed earth sign, which a lot of people associate with rocks. I remember telling my friend one time, I think I said this in another video, it's very specific Tauruses. I think it's like third decan Taurus. No, I think it's second decan Tauruses remind me a lot of rocks. Like they look like rocks to me. That's just my experience, okay? So like when they go out and they're at orientation, or just in general when they're introducing themselves to people, and people are like, oh, like, what do you want me to call you? Or do you have a nickname or whatever? Yeah, you can use your astrological, and it's going to be nourished because people are going to be calling you that, with that sun in the 10th house. That's what you're going to be known for. So that's a little bit about that. Let me use another example. If we're talking about sun in Pisces in the 5th house, so the 5th house has to do with pleasure, romance, casinos, gambling, entertainment, plays, drama, children, amongst other things. And so if you have sun in Pisces, remember Pisces is a mutable water sign. So Pisces is going to absorb whatever the house is. So if you have like sun in Pisces, if you have a sign that is the most modality of that sign. So what I mean by this is Taurus is the most fixed of all of the fixed. Pisces is the most mutable out of all of the mutables. And Aries is the most cardinal out of all of the cardinals. Okay, so if you have sun in any of these three signs, you want to pay more attention to the house. Well, actually, with Pisces, you want to pay more attention to the house. With Taurus, you want to pay more attention to the sign. With Aries, it'd be a little bit of both. Okay, but with Pisces in the 5th house, you want to pay more attention to the house. So the container, right, is going to be whatever the 5th house is, of pleasure, of drama, of theater, whatever it is. So I would say like suns in the 5th house, pay more attention, maybe going to improv classes or creative hobbies, right? Do you paint? Do you draw? Like, what is your muse? And paying more attention to self-care and self-love and things that you really enjoy and that, you really have fun doing. How is your sun going to be nourished with the sun in Pisces? Because, like I said, it's the most immutable sign. Just focus on the house. because your sun is going to form and adapt to whatever the house is. So that's what I would say. And that's for with wherever Pisces is. If you're sun in Pisces, wherever that house is, you want to pay attention to that house. Okay. So let's see. So the sun, Earth, Jupiter, and Saturn are ways to understand exposure, expansion, growth, and time, because all of them have a fair role in age, in intelligence, and in impulse. Okay. I'm not gonna really go over that too much, just because I feel like the word is you can attach the word to the planet. You know, time is Saturn. You know, expansion is expansion is Jupiter. Growth is exposure is Sun, and growth is Earth. So that's how I see that. Also, remember, Taurus is an Earth sign, so it does also have to do with growth. Okay. I would say the very fundamental of plants, of any kind of plant, is Taurus in itself as well. And all of the Tauruses I know love plants, have plants all over their rooms and stuff like that. They really honor their sun sign to the T. So I think that's everything that I have to say about the sun sign within the astrological chart. Just wanting to remind you guys to bring more exposure to the house if you don't already do it, right? Bring more exposure to that house that your sun is in, probably even also where Leo is in. I would actually say also where Leo is, because that's naturally going to affect the house of wherever your sun is as well. They play off of each other, of course. All of the houses and all of, the signs play off of each other. So, it's a beautiful symphony. So just using what you know about nature to your benefit, and using your chart and studying your chart in such a way that always connects you and reminds you of the fact that you are nature embodied. So that's all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on another video. Bye.